What happens when you choose yourself and leave it all? My guest not only left her job, she left the country. So, we're going to talk about what happens when you recognize that your life is not aligned with how you want it to be and you choose to pivot. Because as Black women, we have options and we are able to pivot. If you're a Black woman watching this right now, if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been licensed for over 20 years. I'm also a toxic job survivor, but more importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. I'm also the co founder with Mercer Price of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women. We have the third annual Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women coming up May 1st to the 3rd. If you would like to get on the waiting list for that, I will post that information to have that going across the screen. The waiting list link is also in the description section of this YouTube video. Okay. So the Job Liberation Virtual Summit helps to teach Black women about creating exit plans for replacing their income and their benefits. So health insurance and retirement, so that you have a plan, not that you just up and leave your job, but we understand as Black women that we need to stay ready so you have to get ready. These jobs can poof, be gone in a moment. So it's very important for us as Black women to be ready and have our plans in place. So whenever we want to leave or whenever something happens, we will be prepared. So we have a list of outstanding speakers, Black women speakers, who will be providing information so that you will be prepared. You will have an exit plan based upon when you are ready to leave. Okay. Also, wanted to mention as a privacy consideration, none of the participants, if you come to the summit, you will not be on camera. We understand that your privacy is of utmost importance. So you will not be on camera. Only the summit speakers will be on camera. So today we have Jaylen here with us today. Jaylen, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamani, for having me. I'm so excited and so honored. My name is J Lyn, aka the Dancing Therapist. I am a licensed dance and movement psychotherapist in New York State. I'm also board certified. I have a long background of being a professional dancer, but I've always been passionate about therapy, and I found out there is a license for that, and you can put the two together. And that has really motivated and driven my life choices and got me to where I am today, which we'll talk a lot about.
Yes, absolutely. So let me just give you a little backstory about how I met Jaylen. So Jaylen actually contacted me, I think via email, and she actually was one of my coaching clients, or she is one of my coaching clients. And I think I asked her like, "How'd you find me? How'd you find me again, Jaylen?"
I think I just did a search for Black women career coaches. I think that's like what I literally plugged in.
And so we've been working together. And so it's just fascinating that we've been working together and now she's on my YouTube channel and I'm interviewing her about her experiences. And what's interesting is that when you and I first started working together, it was about, exit planning and things like that. And you had mentioned a while back that you were interested in moving to Ghana eventually, right? But it
Yes.
was kind of like, yeah, long term kind of goal. But, some events had happened. And then I reached out to you later, I think, and I said, hey, do you know about Exodus ASAP, the membership that Stephanie Perry and Rashida Dow have? And I just spontaneously just reached out to you and told you about it. So can you tell us a little bit about what happened from there?
Yeah. So, wow. I feel like how I got here really did start in 2024. And yes, I did that search and it brought me to you. And I was like, oh, Dr. Kamani sounds like the one, the two, and the three. So let me make this happen. And at the time I was working as a full-time mental health therapist in a high school, and I was super burned out. I recognized that I had offered what I could offer in that community space, and it was no longer aligned. I needed to transition. And yeah, I remember that first call that we had, and I think you worded it something along the lines of, if you could do anything or if you could just dream of what it would look like, your life would look like, what would it look like? And I think the first thing I said is I would be dancing my heart out in Ghana. And then I
Uh,
listed some other stuff that felt more practical at the time. And then I remember in that same call, you reflected back to me like, did you just see how your face lit up when you talked about that? Like, why can't that be an option for you?
Mm,
At that time I was also going through some life transitions. I was dealing with a marriage that was ending. So I had like a lot of endings and transition going on at that time in
mhm,
2024.
mhm,
So I was on the cusp. I almost did it then.
mhm,
But then I ended up taking on a really amazing role through it was in a hospital network, and I was working as a wellness program for workforce at a hospital. And I remember when I saw the job description, like I felt butterflies in my stomach, and I was like, okay, I think there's something there. So I've always been a person who's very much in tune with my body, and like slowly but surely have been building up the different cues and what they're tied to and what they mean for me, so that
mhm,
I know when I have a full body yes, I know what that feels like for me. So when I felt that in my belly, like those little butterflies come up, I was like, oh, I feel like this is telling me something. So literally 5 interviews later, it was an intense process. I was at a point where I was like, okay, I really want this job. Of course, I was dealing with this relationship ending. So going through an interview process while doubting who I was as a person was
mhm,
definitely a very difficult process. But now
mhm.
looking back on it, I recognize it was a really important part of the process to getting me to where I am now, because it
Right.
required me to remember who I was.
Yeah,
Like I had lost touch with that. And when
yeah.
they ask you questions about, well, why do you think you deserve this role? And you got to brag on yourself, like you got to pull from, like, oh, wait, no, actually, I am that girl. Like I do have those skill sets. I am
Mhm.
amazing.
And reconnecting
Um,
with what you love about yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That's 100%. And I felt like with each of the questions and interviews, I had more clarity about what I needed to do to be back in alignment with what was for me after
Uh-huh.
going through this period of like deep burnout, professionally and personally.
Mhm.
So I ended up getting the role, and I will say imposter syndrome tried to dance battle me out of the role. I was like,
The dance off.
what? It was a dance. It was you got served 1, 2, and 3. Let me tell you. Because I changed industries. I went from 20 years of working with youth, and in the school systems and nonprofits, et cetera, to now being in the healthcare industry. So, and working with adults, and I'm working from frontline workers to C-suite. So I'm working with everyone and interfacing with them. And I'm just like, do I deserve to be here? Am I qualified enough? Like all those questions that kind of come up where obviously I wouldn't be put in that position if I wasn't. And
Mhm.
so, again, looking back at what purpose that served for me and kind of making this full transition of really connecting to deeply who I am was
Mhm.
me being able to live in that and recognize, like, oh, I am capable of so much bigger than what I thought before. And then, of
Mhm.
course, it helps that I got to network and be in community with other people that were passionate about workforce wellness. I was
Mhm.
getting feedback from employees and C-suite members and other hospital sites. And so it was really great. And I felt like I finally had my first real adult job and success. Like I really had reached success. And I will
Mhm.
say that part because I feel like that was something that was hard for me to let go of.
Mhm.
Because as I was in that role, I felt the burnout symptoms coming back, and I was so confused because I'm
Mhm.
like, I've reached success. I have a director level role. I'm getting this great feedback. I'm learning new things. It's all the things that I envisioned for a role. I'm successful. Why am I burned out?
Mhm.
And like you said earlier about alignment, like I wasn't in alignment with what I needed to be doing for my life at this stage and at this moment in my life.
Mhm.
And yes, you sending that email, I remember that moment
It's
clearly.
random.
It was so random, but Dr. Kamani, I will tell you, when I received that email, I felt irritation, not because, I think it's amazing that you reached out and like were thinking of me and offered that information, but I felt irritation because I was being reminded of what I was supposed to be doing. And what I was
Interesting.
supposed to be doing was scary. And it
Mm.
was definitely a deviation from what society is saying I'm supposed to be doing.
Wait, can I highlight something real quick? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think for many of us, society tells us like there's an expectation of what we should be doing, right? Like all
Hmm.
these kind of things that, oh, you get this title and you are a director and you are all these things. And oh, wow, you have this great professional job. And so you have the bells and whistles and you're like, oh, this is great. Have my first real professional job. But you still felt like this nagging, like this is
Hmm.
still not quite it. And so it was the irritation of the reminder that this is not quite it. And so the irritation was that you got the reminder.
Exactly. That's
Got it.
exactly what the irritation was. And
Okay.
that reminder through your email, talking about Rashida Dow's and Stephanie Perry's Exodus Summit community was
Mhm.
like, it really was, I think, the additional piece that I needed
Mhm.
because to make this jump, I need a community. And
Yes.
so not only was it a reminder of this is actually in alignment with where you're at in your life, it also was, and this is a pathway to make it happen. And I'm like, how dare you?
I had
How dare
packaged
you
everything
remind me?
nicely.
Right. Like both of those, like now I can't say, but it's too hard because now you just provided me a pathway for it not to be.
Right.
Like,
A pathway and a community.
right, right. I was so irritated, but it was right on time. And it was exactly what I needed. Now, immediately after your email, I still didn't jump. I was
Okay.
like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to schedule a 2 week vacation, and that'll clearly be enough. If I go to Ghana for 2 weeks, I don't know why I thought 2 weeks would have been sufficient, but this is what I justified, right? I can have both. I can
Get out your
have
system.
exactly get out my
Yeah. Yeah.
system, like check the box. I still
Yeah.
get to keep my like
Uh-huh.
perfect, successful job. Like
Yes.
I'll just have these little cute little 2 weeks and that'll
Yeah.
be good enough. My body
Yeah.
said, absolutely not. I dare you.
Ooh.
Because, like I said earlier, I'm a person who's very embodied and I have a beautiful connection with my body that's been cultivated over many, many years.
Mhm.
And as much as I love that,
Mhm.
one of the things that can be hard about it is when the body speaks and you don't listen the first time, it'll speak louder and louder and louder until you can't ignore what it's saying.
Mhm.
And that is exactly what started to happen. So I
Mhm.
had a whole bunch of physical symptoms that started to come up. And it got to the point where, dance, an activity that I have done since I've been a little child and I'm so very passionate about and I engage in on a regular basis,
Mhm.
hurt no matter how much physical therapy, acupuncture, medical
Mhm.
massages, Epsom salt baths, you
Mm.
name it, I was doing it. And it still deeply hurt me to do this thing that I loved. And for
Mm.
me, that was like, it had like that effect on me of like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, like something's not okay. And
Right.
I had to turn towards the pain and the communication that my body was having to start doing some deeper investigation of, okay, what's going on? And then the defenses started to fall away. Then the messaging started to fall away. And then the deep sense of knowing that us as Black women have, that deep
Yeah.
intuitive knowing that we have,
Yeah.
started speaking clearly and more louder now that I wasn't holding on to these outside
Yeah.
messages.
Well, you couldn't lie to yourself anymore.
I couldn't.
And your body was saying, girl, you better listen. Because I'm going to take away from you what you really love if you don't listen.
It sure will. It said,
Mhm.
I will shut all of this down.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it got to that point. I was dealing with a whole plethora of health issues that I will
Mm.
tell you after I left the country dissipated, just gone. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so that I would say, I will say when it got to the point where, it was a collaboration of things, but when it hurt for me to do the thing that I love,
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I can't ignore this. And
Mhm.
so, I was planning on this 2 week trip and I kept imagining myself flying back to the US after the trip to Ghana. And I was like, that version of Jaylen's not going to be okay.
Ooh.
She's not going to be less burned out. I can tell you that.
Mm. What
And
did you envision about yourself on that flight back to the US? What do you
yeah,
think you would be
so
like? You would
my
be like.
so my trip was going to be in October. So,
Mhm.
first of all, warm to cold. New
Mhm.
York gets cold. I knew that alone wasn't going to feel good to
Uh-huh.
my joints, right?
Mhm.
But I felt a sense of dread
Mm.
and a sense of just heaviness, I would say, are probably the two biggest sensations that I felt in imagining myself coming back.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was still trying to make sense out of it. I'm like, but it doesn't make sense. I'm learning all these great things in this new role. I work with amazing people. I'm having these great experiences. So why would that be my experience?
Mhm.
And my body pretty much was saying, you ain't got to know right now, but what I do know that needs to happen is you need to pivot. That's what needs to happen.
Okay. Okay. You need to make a life alignment,
Exactly.
realignment, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. And then is that when you got into Exodus ASAP?
Um, I will say one more thing, just like flicked me over.
Okay.
So when the big, beautiful bill passed,
Oh.
I got a notification the next week that my insurance premium was going to go up. Didn't say how much in the email, but I just got a notification. Thank you for the heads up. I got my next paycheck and my insurance premium doubled.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm done. Like after that, I was like, shut it all down. Like I joined Exodus ASAP. I was like, this is not going to be 2 weeks. Like I am not doing this. Like this is absurd. So yeah, so I ended up joining the Exodus ASAP community. And so basically Rashida Dow and Stephanie Perry, as you know, have an amazing protocol that helps Black women who are looking to move on a quicker timeline out of the country. And so they have everything from accountability groups, they have coaching, they have how-to videos, informations about visas, encouragement around decluttering, really just a whole bunch of topics and information that I didn't even know that I didn't know the information.
Hmm.
And I'm just so grateful that one, you nudged me, and two, for them for having that community because I don't I don't know if I would have moved abroad indefinitely. I think I probably would have taken an extended period of time out of the country. But
Hmm.
because I was in that community, I had all of the tools that I needed to be able to just be like, oh no, I feel comfortable being out of the country for as long as I feel like I need to.
Okay.
And they have community of Black women in every single country. I mean, all
Yeah.
over the place. So
Yeah.
that also was really helpful for me in making that transition of knowing that
Yeah.
I'm not alone in the process.
Exactly, right? So like even though your body was telling you, girl, you out of alignment, you need to make a change, all these kind of things, it's still scary making that move,
Yes.
right?
Very.
And there might be some grief related to making moves like this, right? So you're leaving a job, the so-called dream job, the job that everybody's like, oh girl, it's so great you have it. And you're happy you have it too. But leaving a job, leaving a country, leaving your family, leaving your friends, there might be some
Mhm.
grief associated with that too. So can you share with us, like, because you talked about being the dancing therapist, how did like movement help you as you were moving through the grief of, even though it was exciting to move to a different country, but there's also the grief too, like the both and. How did dancing help you with that? I'll
Yeah.
put information about XSACP on the screen, everybody.
Oh, fabulous. I will be transparent and say that it is still a work in progress.
Hmm.
Even after moving abroad, I still have waves of grief, and I talk to other Black women who've done the same and who
Hmm.
experience the same. You know, witnessing from the outside what's happening in the country
Mm,
elicits a lot of grief.
yeah.
And I will say for me, the the friends and the homies that accompany grief for me tend to also be anger,
Mm,
and fear. I will say like that trio for me showed up a lot prior to me moving, and I
mhm.
will say that the anger especially is still very much present for me in this moment because things don't have to be like this.
Right.
And that for me is like a difficult aspect to get past. I will say the grief and how I moved through it. So I'll back up a little bit about, my somatic awareness and how what drew me to dance therapy and psychotherapy.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, over the years, I've kind of developed an awareness of the body signals that I have, almost like an alert system.
Mhm.
And, of course, years of being in my own therapy, I was able to identify that when I feel certain sensations in my body as it ties to certain experiences, I now kind of have an outline of what it's tied to.
Mm,
So if, for instance, I feel, which perfect example about what you're asking, during this period of time of trying to transition out of the country, for me, I felt a lot of gripping in my lower back and base of my spine. And
mm,
so, with my knowledge of movement in the body, this part of the body tends to get activated when our sense of safety and our basic needs are being threatened. And
mhm,
so, because I had that awareness about my body, I would be very intentional about moving this part of my body because, emotions, it's energy, motion. That's
mhm,
like how we want to respond to it. So
mhm,
I'd be very intentional about using my hips and undulating the spine. I will say another place where I really felt it in my body is like having kind of this position in my spine of curved forward.
mhm,
And it really just felt like the weight of everything was like
mhm,
literally pushing me into a smaller space with my spine. And so because I had that awareness and because I understood that it was tied to systemic oppression and my experiences from childhood into adulthood and this posturing in my body, how it tended to show up when I'm having certain experiences. I
Mhm.
also was very intentional about dancing in community in certain styles. So, for instance, I did a lot of dance hall because the technique I was doing had a lot of this like undulating movement. And
Mhm.
while I love the style, the music, and the teachers, I also was doing it because I had that awareness of what moving this part of the body did. It kept me connected to my resilience in the process.
Mhm.
And so there's a long list of those that I intentionally moved through on purpose so that I could stay connected to, this impulse and this deep knowing that I needed to make this big change to be in alignment with my life.
Mm.
Yeah. So I would say that those were very, very important for me in doing that.
Yeah, I forgot to. I actually left out a pivotal question or issue. Right, you actually made this pivot in 2.5 months.
Two and a
Right.
half.
So let's talk about that. Like, how did you make this move from your job into a different country in 2.5 months? How did you do that? Besides being in community with the Exodus ASAP membership community for Black women, how in the world did you do that in 2.5 months?
Yeah. Um, I look back and I'm like, 2.5 months? Yeah, I really did. That was wild. Yes. So the community piece being the foundation of it. Can't do big things
Wow.
without other people. I had a contact in Ghana. She's my good friend named Coach Cass, and she has a company called Africa With Us, and she hosts Black travelers to do trips throughout the continent of Africa. So she's very knowledgeable about all things relocating and moving throughout the continent, different
And what's her name?
countries.
Coach Cass?
Coach Cass, and her company is called Africa With Us.
Okay.
And so she's based in Ghana. And so she was just an unending support in helping me find residents and tips on like what to look for and what areas are good, and then the visa process and just all of those aspects. I had actually applied for the multi-entry visa before the elections.
Hmm.
So at that time,
Smart.
Ghana was giving the 5-year multi-entry visa, and they only
Hmm.
had an option for a 3-year one. I didn't even know the 5-year one existed.
Hmm.
So sorry. So I was grateful that I received the 5-year multi-entry visa. And so I
Hmm.
received that in 2024. I received at the very
Okay.
end of 2024.
Okay.
So she was an amazing support. Of course, Exodus ASAP and walking you through all of the different processes. And I will say the decluttering process was shockingly difficult, of just getting rid of all of my stuff. By the end of it, I was like, I don't care what happens to my stuff. Just get rid of it and get
You
me
got
out
rid
of
of
this
everything?
country. I have a very small storage unit that I feel like I just had for like, it was like a support animal.
Hmm.
I don't need that stuff, but I have a very small storage unit. Yeah, aside from that. I will say the biggest thing for me that was stressing me out the most was needing to find someone to take over my lease in New York, because
Uh,
ain't no way I was about to be paying New York rent while also living abroad. Like those two things were not going to happen. I mean, yeah, I won't say impossible, but
right.
that would have been a source of a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
So once I had that covered, I was
How'd
like
you do that?
everything else. So there's a number of sites. One of them, Lease Break, is what it's called. And that's actually how I found the person who ended up taking over my lease.
Okay.
I will say New York City is very frustrating in the sense that people don't choose where they're moving until they're within the month mark of when they would like to move. So I was advertising, 2 months, 2.5 months out, and people are like, oh, well, can I move in 2 weeks? And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, what do you mean? What do you think this is?
Right.
So I was like to the wire before I found
Wow.
someone to take over my lease because people waited that close.
Mhm.
I think I ended up getting someone 5 weeks out from me actually leaving the country, which was cutting it very close for
Yes,
comfort.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And how did you decide on where you wanted to go in terms of leaving the country?
Mhm.
How'd you decide on that?
Intuitively, I mean, I think I was connected to the conversation that we had. Like when you asked me that question back in 2024, it
Mhm.
came from such a deep knowing. And yeah, like I think again, like I said earlier, like when I know what a full body yes feels like, and I've had enough experiences through my life and career that if I'm in alignment with that, things work out. And so I had such strong clarity that, going to Accra, Ghana was where I needed to go first. I've also been there before, but I hadn't been there for 10 years. So things, of course, have changed quite a bit in that time frame.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just knew that that's where I needed to go first. Even though at that point in time, I heard of a lot of Black women moving to other places, like
Right.
Portugal's really popular. I know
Mhm.
different places throughout the country. And Mexico's really popular, Panama, other places.
Mhm.
But for me, I was just very clear that I needed to go to Ghana first, and I couldn't explain it. Now I can, but at the time I couldn't explain it. But I just was really connected to that full body yes when I felt like it was aligned. So.
Okay. And can you share with us what was it like when you finally got to Ghana? What was it like for you?
Oh, I was so tired.
Mm.
I was so tired. I didn't sleep one bit on that flight. Not that I didn't want to. I don't know, I just didn't sleep.
Mhm.
I was very tired, and for the first 2.5 weeks,
Mhm.
all I did was sleep and eat. That's it. Like the most I did was go from the bed to the door to pick up my food delivery, eat, and then come back and lounge. Like that's
Mhm.
all I did. It felt like an XL. That's what it felt like. It felt
Wow.
like a very just relaxing, releasing exhale. Like I just was like, still contending with, of course, the grief, like we talked about, and the like, what did I just do was still there. Like,
Uh-huh.
Jay, are you
Like proud of
okay?
yourself, but like, what did I just do?
Like, did you really you just
Yeah.
left?
Yeah.
Like, um, but the biggest sensation was just like a release. Like, I just felt like I could rest. And it's so interesting because 3 weeks after I got to Ghana, I got a notification on my phone. I wear a smartwatch, and I got a notification on my phone, and it said, your resting heart rate has decreased, which typically happens when you've been super active and like that causes it. I was the opposite of active for those 3 weeks. But even with that, like the amount of stress that had been
Mhm.
released from my body was so immense that I got
That's
that clear
profound.
notification. And it wasn't a small decrease, it was like notable. I was like, wow, I
That is
really
profound.
needed that. Hmm.
Yeah. I just think about for us as Black women and Black people, how
Yeah,
much stress we're exposed to on a daily basis in this country. And just being away from that, your resting heart rate just decreased. That
plummeted. It was like, and I know it wasn't because I was active. I mean, in New York, you have to
Mhm.
walk everywhere. I was walking
Mhm.
5 miles a day, multiple dance
Mhm.
classes a week, the
Mhm.
gym, biking. I was doing none of that in those 3 weeks in Ghana. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just felt so much safer. Like the rest that I had was so deep. I just felt so much more at ease with each day that passed by. And yeah, the stress before I left versus like that period of time and that transition, it was very noticeable. Yeah.
And that was in a short period of time, right? That your heart rate did
Three
that within
weeks.
oh
That's
my
it. 3 weeks.
oh my God. I agree
Yeah.
with what a comment in the chat. That sounds wonderful. Exactly what I need. Relaxation. Girl, I feel the same way. I'm like, woo, that sounds glorious. Absolutely. So, Jaylen, I'm wondering something though. Um, I'm wondering if anybody in your circle was a little less than enthusiastic about your move, and if they were projecting any fears on you about
Yes.
your move. Like, what were those fears, and how did you navigate through those fears? Projected
Yeah.
fears.
That's a great reflection. So I will say that so the last time I was in Ghana was 10 years ago, right? I was there for just under 6 months. So it was another period of time where I was like, I can't do this country. Get me out. I didn't have the community and the support that I had, this time in order to make it longer. But I will say that time, everyone was like, you're going where? You're doing what? You're doing it. Why?
Mm.
I will say this time I received so much less of that because of the state of the things in the US. And I
Uh,
remembered how shocked I was that
mm,
I wasn't getting as much pushback. I did get some pushback when I listed other countries that I wanted to go to. Like, Mexico was one of the places that I listed. And then, of
mhm,
course, I heard all the horror stories about what could happen to me.
mhm, mhm,
And so I had to be very selective about who I talked to about, my plans with,
Mhm,
because I was
mhm,
navigating my own fears and my own
mhm,
questions.
mhm,
And I knew that if I wasn't selective about that, that could have the impact of keeping me from staying on track with what I knew I needed to do. But I
mhm.
will say, Dr. Kamani, overwhelmingly, the response I usually got was like visible sigh, like a and then something along the lines of like, wow, I want to do that.
Ooh,
And so it really, like, especially when I was leaving my role and I was
mhm,
interfacing with so many people as, workforce wellness director,
mhm, mhm.
it became an opportunity for me to be a possibility model. And so I became more intentional with
I
my
like that
conversations.
possibility model.
Oh, I didn't think of that. I got that from Rashida Dow and Stephanie Perry.
Okay,
They
I
talked
love
about that. So
that.
I'm like, I'm gonna take that and spread it too.
Okay.
But yeah, like I then when I saw these reactions and I could see the body language change and the breathing change, and I was like, okay, I want to be really intentional about sharing with people, and opening up the conversation more about, well, what is it that you feel like you really wish? And is that impossible for you? Is it actually out of reach for you? What supports
Mhm,
do you need to make this happen? Because if you
mhm,
want to do it and it's on your heart, clearly it's there for a reason. And so that became the conversation much more than 10 years ago when it was more trying to like, you should stay here, it's not safe out
mhm.
there, et cetera, et cetera.
When it wasn't such a nightmare here.
Exactly. Now everyone's like, I get it. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
that was
You caught
easier
off
than
of
I
a few.
thought.
Right, right, right. So you have more support. So in terms of like your life now compared to your life before you left, right? So what does an aligned life look like? Right? So we talked about how your body was like, girl, it's not it. So what does it look like to live a life that is more aligned?
Mhm. Um, when you said the part about the body, I was gonna say, first of all, I can run downstairs now. So I have arthritis. I've been a professional dancer for decades.
Wow.
And I have arthritis in both knees, knee surgery in New York. Those subway stairs would take me out almost on a daily
Ooh.
basis. It was a strong pep talk every time. And I
Mhm.
remember one of the days I was going to go meet someone and I decided to take the stairs instead of the elevator. And I found myself jogging down the stairs and I stopped and I literally laughed out loud because I was like, who am I abroad? Like I'm running downstairs. Like, but it speaks to how much the inflammation in my body has decreased. And
Mm,
so tying to the question that you were asking me about what does an aligned life look like for me, I now have given myself the permission to go all in on dance and all the ways that I'm deeply informed in how dance is imperative to us as African descended people. So yes, the fun aspect of it, yes, there are performance careers that people can have with it, but I'm really interested in how Black social dance has been used to prepare us for rebellions. They've been used to get us through protests. They've been used for civil rights. They've been used to encode our history. So there's like dances that we do socially that were literally done hundreds of years ago in Ghana, and it's been preserved aesthetically the same, but just by different
mm,
names.
mm.
And so especially at this time where the Black population is under such direct fire, which we always are, but this is
Yeah,
just a ramped up version of it.
yeah.
I'm very clear that my role as, an embodied historian and a dancer is to really go all in on that, as well as in the space of healing and being connected to our identity. All of that is tied together. And so
Mhm,
for me, an aligned life has shifted from a life where I worked to live pretty much and hope that the role that I have is, as closely aligned as possible to what I feel passionate about, but I got to
mhm,
pay these bills, to
mhm,
now it's been kind of flipped upside down where I take time to really dream and you know explore what in my wildest dreams do I want my life to look like and what are the components that need to be there for it to feel fulfilled, and then
mhm.
I work my way backwards. And that's been a really big shift for me. I literally was just talking to a colleague about this last week because I'm like, this is cool, but this is weird because that's not what we're taught to do in the US.
That is, it's a total shift of how we were brought up, specifically as Black women.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. And in fact, people watching this might be listening to you and thinking, like, I can't do that. Like, that must be nice for her. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a distancing or thinking like that's not possible for us. And I just think about like so many Black women that I've worked with as clients. There's almost this um, because we've often had to work so hard, the sense that, there's no space for us to experience joy or rest
Mm-hmm.
or alignment, like, because we have bills to pay, we have these things, right? Yes, we do have bills to pay, yet we also deserve other things. And what I'm hearing from you is movement is a form of healing for us, it's a cultural form of healing. What white supremacy has done has disconnected us from our cultural forms of healing. And so, what I hear from you is that you're trying to reconnect to that for yourself, but it sounds like you also want to support that for other people as well,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So, in what ways can movement, dance, be a way to help Black women with like making difficult decisions in their lives and just being settled in ourselves and also giving
Mm,
ourselves permission to
mm,
say, yeah, this is not the life I want for myself. You know what I'm saying? Like I
mhm.
got all the degrees, I got all the certifications, I got just like you, right? I did all the things, but I'm not fulfilled. Like, this is not the life I want. Like, how can we use movement in a way to help us connect to how we really feeling and to support a process where we are becoming more aligned with ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like that was a question I had as I went through grad school when I made this transition from being a full-time professional dancer to moving into the space of being a therapist, a dance and movement psychotherapist.
Mhm.
And while the higher education did not provide this information, I was hungry to go seek it out and thankfully was supported in finding that with other Black dance movement psychotherapists. But really, from an ancestral lens, understanding that movement and our arts have always been a part of our process. Like I said earlier, rebellions, rites of passages, our
Mhm.
spiritual practices, encoding familial wisdoms and stories. That's always been a part of who we are. And while I really appreciate that the therapy space is now putting more of an emphasis on the body in the process, I
Mhm.
still feel like it's so far from the intelligence and the genius of where we come from as African
Mhm.
descended people of what movement has been.
Mhm.
Um, so I want to say that as like the container of everything. I
Mhm.
really do know, not just believe, but know from studying that movement for us with our other arts too, and they haven't been separated, they've worked collaboratively,
Mhm.
has been imperative in us always remembering who we are. And so I feel like with movement that it's so important to use movement to connect to that because a lot of what white supremacy does from the very jump, right? When they brought us over, they human trafficked us over
Yep,
was to strip us of who we are. It is
absolutely.
impossible to strip us of who we are. It is
Mhm.
encoded in us. It's encoded in our DNA. It's encoded in our bodies. It is
Mhm.
passed down intergenerationally, and it shows up in our arts and, of course, our movements. And so, I would say for Black women that are on this journey and this trajectory is start from a place of remembering, not about adding more skill sets, adding more tools, we as Black women are so great at getting another degree and certification. That's why I was laughing when you were saying that, because we will go back to school. But we don't need anything else on top of us. Like we are it. Like we are it. Like
Exactly.
really, like we embody all of it. I mean, we are the foundation for the civil rights movements that happen. We're the backbone, the creators, the drivers, the fuelers of the movements to keep going. We are the ones who society always looks to fix things, right? Very
Mhm.
problematic, but
Mhm.
it's what society does. A
Right,
lot of our family structures, we are the backbone, right?
right.
And our workplaces, we're the solid go-to person that they know that they can trust. And is always that is the role that we always play. But it's important for us to to give ourselves that permission for our own life and our own purpose, because that's what we're here for. We are
Yeah.
not America's labor mule. We are
Well,
not.
the thing about it is, right, we're often seen as the one to save everybody else
Yep.
at the expense of harming ourselves,
Hmm.
but no focus on how do we help save her. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, 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 you help save everybody else, and you know you'll be okay, or you just wait, or whatever. And it's just sense that as Black women, that we should just accept the crumbs, or we should just
Mm-mm.
be satisfied with this disrespect or all these other things. But again, as Black women, I think that many of us, I would say the 92% of us, we have said, you know what? No. We are tired of putting ourselves out here. We're tired of speaking truth and you're not listening. So we are
Hmm.
saying, we're going to step back. And so now we're talking about other forms of healing right now, right? So Trisha Hershey talked about the rest revolution. And now
Hmm.
we're talking about, again, cultural forms of healing, movement,
Yes.
dance. And so when I think about, when you were talking, it made me think about something else, Jaylen. So I
Yeah.
was thinking about, cultural forms of healing with movement. And I was thinking about like soul music, right? And how sometimes
Mm.
you would hear somebody sing like Aretha Franklin or Gladys Knight, you would feel it in your soul, right? Or
Yes.
like when you're eating like really good soul food, like you like close your eyes 'cause it's so good. And like, it's in your soul, right? But I was
Yes.
also thinking about the music, s- some of the modern day music that's geared to our young people,
Hmm.
that it's kind of stripped of soul in some
Mm.
ways. And in some ways, it's stripped of the dance element of it. And so for me, I'm like, what's that about? Like it's almost like there's this focus on young people not really dancing communally. It's kind of like dancing like a silo kind of thing, right? And I
Yeah.
just feel like it's like an intentional kind of way to keep us separate from one another so we
Mm.
don't unite. And I just think that the more that we have conversations like this and we look at ways that dancing can help us individually, but also as a community.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because at the time of the pandemic, I was working with high schoolers. And so,
Mhm.
at that time, TikTok was popular before, right? The pandemic. But really, the subscribers to TikTok really jumped during the pandemic because we didn't have nothing else to do. And so, dance challenges on TikTok still are very, very popular. I mean, I love them too, secretly, don't tell anyone. But one thing that was I talk about this often when I give different presentations about dance therapy and Black dance. That was really interesting during this period of time was that the style during most of the pandemic that was so popular and viral during that time, even though we were forced to be in seclusion and separate from community, was a style called stiff hips from Philly. And you've probably seen it, but it's where the kids do like the movements and the tapping and all the things, right? But the accent is on the hips. And I, of course, was like, well, I have to learn because clearly I'm not going to get left behind. I'm going to stay cool. But the more that I, dug into it, it was really interesting because, like I said earlier, the hips in this area of the body is very much about, safety and having your basic needs met. And so it's not a surprise to me that during a time of collective trauma going on across the globe, that the most popular style derived from the Black community was about the hips. So even though, again, like I said earlier, they can't strip us of our identities, it's impossible. Even though we were, at home and we couldn't be with family, we couldn't go to school in person, we couldn't go to work in person, still, our dances we're present to make sure that we persevere through that time and we're still moving all of those emotions and reminding us of our resilience and keeping us moving that resilience and found a way to keep us connected to each other. And so like I there's so many things with Black dance like across the diaspora of things that happen simultaneously, of lines of movements that have been preserved literally over hundreds and hundreds of years, where we move ourselves to not just safety and resilience, but really thriving. And that will never be something that can be stripped from us, even if they try to isolate us, even with, putting individualism on a pedestal and all of that mess. Like, we are still a collectively focused people. And so that's very much encoded in our dances, even when we try not to be.
True, true, true,
Yeah.
true. And what are some of the ways that, because you talked about ways that you have used dance for yourself, what are some of the ways that you envision using dance in your professional work?
Yeah, so right now I have private practice, and I work with solely Black women, and a lot of it is what I've spoken about here, which is the reconnection to identity. And that process usually looks like movements that align itself with a shedding of propaganda and programming that's been forced on Black women in every space that we're in, as well as a reconnection and a reclaiming and a remembering of who we are. And that can look like a number of things. So depending how comfortable a person is with movement, sometimes I have people that are like, oh, I danced since I was 2. And so, I'm like, we're gonna go in. um, and then some people not so much, which is all fine. And if that is the case, then we do a lot of work, kind of what I tied to about learning what the body is saying. The body has its own language. It has its language through, sensations that you feel. It has its language in how we hold our body. It has its language in how that shifts when we relate to certain people and how we literally move through space. And so, really building that awareness as it's tied to this remembering, this shedding, this deprogramming. And then not stopping there, because it's not just about giving tools to cope with being in this oppressive society. That's not okay. It's about, how do we get you to the life that you deserve to live? How do you get to the point where you get to be your freest, unapologetically authentic self, and are moving in ways that your body is begging to move through every single space, regardless of who's there? And so that is the work that I do right now individually. And before the end of this year, I will start having offerings that are for collective opportunities for Black women to engage, because community can be built so quickly with movement. And if you've ever seen someone do the electric slide on a sidewalk and you join in, you see it firsthand, right? Suddenly we're all family and we know these steps together. But that again is what Black dance is. There's so many layers of the power and the power of Black dance. And so that will be an additional offering that I'll have before the end of 2026.
Awesome. So if they go here, then what would they get if they go here?
Great. So this link will take you to sign up to my mailing list, so you can be the first to know about these offerings that will be happening this year. And as a thank you, I offer 5 free videos for you to embody firsthand of what movement can do for you. And I have 5 different offerings, and you can do it from the comfort of your desk, from a seated
Mm,
position, and they're all within 4 minutes or shorter. So it's very easy to fold into your busy schedule. You can do it during a lunch break. You can do it before a stressful meeting or conversation.
I
You
love
can do
that.
it afterwards to decompress. But you really get to try on firsthand of what the power of movement can be for you and what your body's asking for.
And the privacy of wherever you are too. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Nobody has to be looking
Exactly.
at you. I love that. I
Exactly.
love that. Okay. And what about okay, so this is available. So you have a private practice, but
Yes.
then this is available to anybody,
This is
right? So we
available to
talk
you.
about private practice, you're able to provide telehealth services, right? But this is available to anybody who maybe doesn't not maybe doesn't need therapy, but maybe needs some assistance with stress, right? Or support in other
Exactly.
ways. Okay. And what about your YouTube channel? Can you share them about your YouTube channel too?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel right now, I explore my all things dance, all things therapy, and all things living a purpose-filled life. That's what I say in every video. And so that really is the focus of what I do. And so I share some of my experiences as I travel abroad. I show you some glimpses of what it looks like in my time in Ghana. And then we also experience some like movement and different practices there. So, like for instance, I have a video that's dance affirmations for fear. And so
Ooh,
you get to pair those two together. I love an affirmation.
dance
I love a good
affirmations for
affirmation.
fear.
Yeah, and so then we pair it with movement and like, short little choreo. Not a TikTok dance challenge, but like
Okay,
a little bit of movement, right?
okay.
So that you really get to embody that affirmation. And so that's the type of content that I have on my YouTube channel. I
That's
will be doing some live movement sessions again before the end of the year so that you can put that on your calendar. We can move together. We can have, we can be in community in real time during that, and we can
mhm.
have feedback with each other and dialogue with each other. So, yes, I will also have that on my YouTube channel.
Okay, and what's the name of your YouTube channel?
Jaylen, the dancing therapist.
Okay, so again, I have that in description section, so I'm going to put it here too. So Jaylen, I'm going to put it here, the dancing therapist. So it's going to be in the chat too. Okay, so check out the YouTube channel as well. Okay, so it's going to be in the chat. Okay, and then it's on the screen. So check out the YouTube channel. So go
Thank you.
subscribe to her YouTube channel as well. Okay, so Jaylen, if there's a woman, black woman watching right now, and she's watching you, she's listening to, she's like, oh my gosh, I wish I could do what she did, but I just feel like I just can't do it. I just can't.
Mm,
What words of wisdom can you offer to her?
yeah, I'm gonna offer her the same words that I had to repeat to myself over and over again, which is those things that I dream and that I really yearn for were not put in my life to torture me. They were
Mhm,
put in my life to be a guide for what is supposed to happen for me. And so when I began to have more and more conviction and faith in that, the easier it became to figure out the how. The how is easy.
mm,
Now, executing it can, it can bring out some things, but the
mhm,
actual how it's done, right? There
mhm,
are Black women who are doing it, me, but other
mhm.
Black women who are doing it as well, in thousands and thousands of us that are doing it right now, the very thing that you want to do, and that's put on your heart for a reason. It's not meant to torture you. It's meant to guide you and to pull you in so that you can actually live that.
Yeah. And so, a big part, because you talk about the how, there's resources for that, right? So Exit
Exactly.
ASAP, seeing other Black women, but we also have to get over the mindset. So, what can she do to address those mindset barriers, the fears, on all these other things that kind of get in the way?
Yeah, I'm always going to go to movement. For me, fear is a very strong energy, and I think my go-to movements, and it's different for every person. But my go-tos for fear tends to be anything that involves like shaking, like literally shaking off. We hear when you're afraid, I'm shaking with fear.
Mm,
That's our body literally trying to discharge that energy. And so I
mm,
turn to that movement and amplify it so that I can regulate myself again. I'll put a timer on for 3 minutes and I will shake whatever needs to shake. And for myself, afterwards, I feel a lot more grounded to be able to go back to the next step that I need to have. I feel like that paired with community, having those possibility models, having those people that are, being in community with you and accountability with you so that you can work towards your goal, along with having the movement incorporated into it, I think you'll be able to get past it. Oh, well, I know
mhm.
so.
Okay. So movement and also as both therapists, therapy as well, right? So just
Yes,
looking at ways that you can address the fear head on, right? Because when we think
exactly.
about, making changes, connecting to alignment, like all of these things about making changes, connecting, it brings up fear. That's a normal reaction. We're talking
Hmm.
about ways to process and really come to terms or acknowledge that the fear is a normal part of change. It is, okay?
It
But
is.
not to let the fear stop you, not to just stop you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Jaylen, I know that you also came to the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women. Can you
I
please
did.
share about what are some of the ways that participating in the summit, how did that help you pivot?
Oh, it was so monumental. When I talk about the community that I needed to make that transition, the Job Liberation Virtual Summit was a key component of that. I think that was actually the first of, well, you I reached out to, and then I knew about the Job Liberation Summit. I think that was the next thing that I reached out to for like the how piece of it. And you had such amazing speakers that gave such tangible steps to work towards the goal of making that pivot.
Mhm,
At that time when I attended, I was pivoting to a new role and I was pivoting
mhm,
out of the job that I had.
mhm.
But even just, hearing the tangible steps, but then also seeing them as those possibility models gave me that much more certainty in the step that I was taking. Still felt the fear, like you just said, we still
Of
do it with the
course.
fear, but when
Normal,
you
yeah.
have the information and then you have the people that are showing you what they did and they're talking
Mhm.
about their story and you're hearing aspects that sound similar to yourself, it just makes it less doubt and fear and just
Right.
fear but certainty. And
Yeah.
so having that piece there was really helpful. I will also say that I also connected to so many women that attended the Job Liberation Virtual Summit.
Mhm,
And so that continued to be community afterwards,
mhm.
and offered another level of accountability and support in the process. Yeah, I'm so grateful that I went. And yeah, I really encourage anyone who hasn't gone, or even if you already have gone, to definitely go because the speakers that you have they were phenomenal. They were very knowledgeable, but also really great at breaking down the information in a way that felt feasible and possible and not overwhelming. So that
Exactly.
was a key part.
The how to, right? The planning. And the other part that you talked about was community. So from the Job Liberation Virtual Summit, we have a WhatsApp community. And so that WhatsApp community is very active. Like I pop in every now and then, but they are, I mean, they have formed some bonds, okay?
Yes.
So, in terms of accountability, sharing resources, support. So, you have ongoing community from the Job Liberation Virtual Summit. Not only the information you share at the summit, but ongoing community through the WhatsApp group. Okay, so just check that out. Now, Jaylen, what if there's a Black woman who's watching? She's like, okay, I heard that. That sounds good, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. What would you say to a Black woman who's on the fence about coming to the Job Liberation Virtual
Oh,
Summit?
coming to the job of, okay, I was like, which one? Leaving the country, living a aligned life. Um, yeah, I would say you should definitely do it. If it's even a consideration, I think that's a lot of information right there. If you're
Mhm,
at the point where you're curious about what information will be shared, if you're feeling a part of yourself that's feeling drawn to the information and the topic, I think that that's really key information that's worth investigating and dropping into further and
mhm,
going. I mean, the only thing that you don't have anything to lose. You're just going to gain valuable information and have the opportunity of being in community.
mhm.
But in the process, you're going to find information that's going to be useful to you in the immediate, but also in the long term. For
Right.
me, my journey was a longer journey, right? It was over the
Mhm,
span of a year and a half or so.
mhm.
But the information that I learned from the Job Liberation Virtual Summit, I used even a
Yeah,
year and a half later. So,
yeah,
yeah, I would say do it. You get
yeah,
to be in
yeah,
full community.
yeah. So it's information that you have that you decide when you want to utilize it, right? It's not like you
Exactly.
use it right away. If you want to, you can, but it's like you have the information, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about,
I'm so
yes.
sorry. I was gonna say one more thing. I
Mhm,
also feel like, with the Job Liberation Virtual Summit and this whole transition that I've made,
mhm,
part of what really helped lower my stress levels and help with the process was having a plan.
mhm,
Even before I had committed to transitioning out of that school job, and I know we talked a whole bunch of times
mhm, mhm,
before I made the leap, right?
mhm, mhm,
And even before I moved out of the country, which is something I've spoken about a lot,
mhm.
just having a plan was so monumental in
Yeah,
me feeling a different level of safety and not being caught unprepared.
yes.
And so I would say that would be the other piece of it too. If you're on the fence, why not just have a plan? right? I mean,
Exactly.
we see what's happening with industries and the unemployment rate for Black folks especially, and we see what's happening. Why not just have a plan so that if
Exactly.
something happens, at least you know exactly who you can go to, a resource that you have, a community that you can bounce ideas off of, so that you're not left like scrambling for a plan. But
Exactly.
yeah, I think it's really helpful. I
I
found that very
completely
helpful.
agree. I completely agree. And I always think about like plan A, B, C, and D, you know,
Exactly.
especially during this time,
During
because I'm
these times,
like, first of
especially.
all, the jobs are not loyal.
Yeah.
Second of all, like, it may be like sometimes Black women that I hear in particular are like, oh my God, job market's so bad, I got to just stay here. Okay. And I'm like, okay, I get that, right? You may want to stay, but also think about if something happens to the job, then what might you do, right? I'm not saying
Hmm.
just leave, but what happens if it does just go away, right? Or
Hmm.
if it gets to a point you're like, I can't stay in this place, you would have already started making plans for how you would pivot to something else. If it's another job, if it's your business, whatever it is, but at
Exactly.
least you have plans because when you start thinking about, like you said, when you start thinking about exits, it is such a degree of liberation. I just think about when I was at
Hmm.
a job. Now, I moved in silence. I didn't tell nobody at that toxic job I was planning to leave, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm thinking in my head, like, I am getting out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, that helped me feel like, okay, this is time limited. I'm making a plan. I'm getting out of here. And that helped with my mental health. And so we need to
Absolutely.
think about having plans can help you have some degree of, okay, all this crazy stuff happening to me at this job, I can't control this stuff. But guess
Yeah.
what I can control? I can control getting my exit plan together. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And have all these other options I can plan for and I can control that. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful of that. So Jaylen,
Exactly.
I'm going to read the community chat and then I'm going to give you the last word when we after we read the community chat. So I see, hey Cynthia, how you doing? Hello, March, the Kamani sisters. So we clarify, yes, you talk about career coaching, yes. Okay, so real burnout doesn't always show up as a crisis, true. Everything
Hmm.
being said, I can resonate with, yes. This also happens when we as Black women engage in self abandonment behaviors. As
Mm.
many of us were raised to overcommit and overgive to people and even in jobs.
Let me tell you,
The
as a
superwoman syndrome.
firstborn daughter, as a
Ooh,
firstborn daughter, do I feel that comment? And I feel like that was a lot of this journey too, and still is a part of my journey. Yeah, absolutely, of being conditioned to over provide for other communities
yeah,
and just to abandon ourselves, and to
yeah,
now be in a space of where I unapologetically am putting myself first and
yeah,
knowing I get to do that.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I really
Yeah,
appreciate
we
that.
have to break so many different expectations that people have
Hmm.
and really saying, I want to live this life for me, right?
Yeah.
Without people, that there might be backlash with that too, right?
Yeah.
Understanding that we may encounter backlash, but it comes along with it. It comes along with it.
And
Yeah.
it also gives you clarity of who does that person need to be in my circle if they're giving me backlash?
Ooh,
Because
good
why do you have a
question.
problem? Why do you have a problem with my resting heart rate dropping? Why do you have a problem with my heart being healthy? Why do you have a problem with my stress levels being down? Why do
Good
you have a
question.
problem with me sleeping well at night? Like, what? Hold on. Why? Wait.
You're questioning me being well?
Like,
Let me side eye you. Like what? What's that about?
hmm.
Right. Exactly. Oh, somebody watching from Angola. Okay.
Well,
Hello.
hello, Angola. Yes, y'all
Wow.
got some fire dances in Angola. I might be there in 2027.
Okay.
Because that
You
Afro
you
house
got
in
me a video
Kuduro.
about it so we can see it. Okay.
Okay, I will. I will.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that's right. The improvement of your health. Yes, yes, yes. Let's see.
Yeah.
I love dancing. Thank you for sharing this
Nice.
information. Evening, ladies. Very enlightening as usual, Dr. K. I am following you now, Jaylen. Good. Okay, so
Thank you.
everybody, please follow Jaylen on YouTube.
Yes,
Okay. So
please.
remind them of your YouTube channel.
My YouTube channel is J Lyn the Dancing Therapist.
Yes. And please remind them again of services that you offer.
Yes. So if you are a Black woman living in the state of New York and you're looking for a therapist that is Black liberation focused and African psychology as a foundation, but uses dance, movement, and somatic therapies, I do have slots available for that. And then I do also offer collaboration for leaders, healers that would like to look for ways to incorporate movement and dance, the wisdom of dance into your offerings to have a greater impact on the communities that you serve. And then please follow me because I will be having more offerings before the end of the year. And I think it's going to be right on time and what we need, especially given all that we're maneuvering right now, not just in the US, but worldwide.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. So I want to thank Jaylen for being my guest today. I'm so
Aw.
excited that she was able to come on. And I want to remind everybody again that the waiting list is open for the third annual Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women to help you create an exit plan for replacing your income and your benefits, your health insurance and retirement. Like we just talked about, to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Okay. Nothing's going to harm you by getting ready, okay?
Mhm.
So, Jaylen, any last words you want to share with our community?
Yeah, I just really want to drive in that those dreams and those longings that you have, those are meant to be your reality. So I really hope that you go all in on them and that you find the community that supports you in doing that.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, everybody. So as you're watching this video, please give this video a thumbs up. Please share that you like this video so that it's fed to more Black women. Also, subscribe to Jaylen's channel, subscribe to my channel. It's free. Okay, it's absolutely free. Okay. Also, turn the notification bell so you know when we both go live or we upload another video. And share this video with at least two other Black women. Okay. So I will see you all later. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.